Hello there and welcome to the Bitcoin Takeover podcast. This is season 16, episode 20. This season is sponsored by NoOne, Citrea, Sideshift.ai, Hodling.ch, Layer 2 Labs, and Bitcoin.com News. And we are live with Felix Billbert, who is the chief marketing person and business development person in a startup from the European Union, which provides swaps between Bitcoin and Euro, and also a debit card, and a lot of interesting stuff, which I think is much more interesting under this regulatory environment. His name is Felix Billbert, and we're going to be talking about his product as well as the Bitcoin environment in Europe and how hard it is to build a business on this continent. So it's good to have you, Felix.
Yeah, nice. Great for having me for doing this.
So tell me about Wavespace. It seems like right now it's a free people team. You're very ambitious in building something that's easy to use and non-custodial. That's one of the reasons why I found it interesting. You don't have to give up custody to your service. You're just like the middleman between what's happening.
Yeah, exactly. So essentially, we are on our mission. Our core mission is to provide you with all the tools you need to live on Bitcoin, while not sacrificing like the core thing that in our eyes makes Bitcoin Bitcoin, which is the not your keys, not your coins, right? You're owning your Bitcoin, because if you don't own them, if you don't hold them, they are not yours. But one thing to point out is that while we focus strongly on self-custody, the moment of exchange obviously has to be is where we need to take custody, right? To essentially, if you want to sell Bitcoin through us, you send us Bitcoin, we hold them for about 60 seconds and send a Euro transaction to your bank account immediately afterwards. And same goes for the card, Wave card, which essentially you need you can top up with Bitcoin and then spend it anywhere. But again, we are trying to really focus and kind of push this this self custody aspect. So we all like only top it up when you want to spend it. We make it really easy, and Lightning coming soon as well.
I did see that it's on your roadmap for the first quarter of 2025. I'm actually curious how you can pull that out because I've interviewed Marco Tarman, who is the mining manager from NiceHash, and they have this NiceHash Pay service, which they have been promoting and pushing around Europe. They had these payment terminals that are pretty cool, and they enabled Lightning payments for goods and services, except that they say because of MiCA specifically, they had to shut down that one. So how is your startup able to work in this environment?
Yeah, so what we do is we work very closely with a variety of partners, and one of them in particular who essentially takes care of all the KYC AML stuff that's needed to be done, and they are on their way to get a MiCA license. It's very different in every single state. Every single state has slightly different deadlines with kind of how when they want to enforce MiCA. But we know that that partner, they are very close with the authorities in Estonia. They're based in Estonia, and essentially they are like really focused on getting that MiCA license. But this won't stop us from kind of operating, since they're already in the process of doing so.
Yeah, to me it's very interesting because MiCA has a clear requirement that you need to mention what's the source of the funds. And in the case of Bitcoin, that's fairly easy to prove on chain. You show addresses, you show exactly the provenance of those funds that came to your address, and maybe you get some papers from your lawyers. But in the case of Lightning, that's difficult because there is no on-chain record. So how do you do the accounting for something like the Lightning Network?
Yeah, so I think it's it's important to take a step back and just kind of fundamentally understand how regulation works and worked over the past decades. Because the reality is that these regulations and getting the required license is all about essentially proving to authorities that you're doing the best that you can to kind of prevent blacklisted funds from going through your services, and making sure that you can identify the customer and have like proper KYC onboarding rules. But it's important to also understand that it's really about doing what you can, right? Because if you truly think about it, there will always be nefarious activities in the banking sector, in cash payments, in the crypto space, and it's really about doing everything that you can. And so, to your specific question about Lightning, there are different tools from, for example, Chainalysis has a Lightning service. There's others who also have have Lightning monitoring capabilities. To now say how kind of accurate they are is something nobody really can kind of verify. But according to the regulations and to the authorities, what Chainalysis offers and what other companies offer seem to be okay to kind of comply with anything that they want, right? Everyone who understands the Lightning Network at the same time understands that you can only kind of see one hop back and one hop forth, and so it's obviously kind of a game of heuristics to catch the bad kind of apples. But it's
There's more
always
to this because there is sender privacy in Lightning. So your transaction gets routed through multiple, they're like onion nodes, just like in
right.
Tor. There's no way for you to know with precision where the funds are coming from. But I guess the fact that you have a KYC process ongoing, it's almost like saying, yeah, these are my coins. It's just that MiCA has this specific requirement that demands you to say where the coins come from. And there's no good way of doing that, as far as I know.
Yeah, you're absolutely right. I mean, when it comes to this, I think a bunch of other exchanges, I saw a meme or like a rant about Coinbase essentially needing you to do a Satoshi test, to send a couple of Satoshis to Coinbase to verify that this wallet is yours. But if you don't have Bitcoin yet, you can't verify your wallet, so you can't actually withdraw Bitcoin from Coinbase. So it's like, that's like one stupid implementation of how you can kind of be compliant with MiCA. But to be completely honest, we rely on our partner to kind of tell us what's okay, what's not okay, and will then need to implement and change the product in a way that's compliant. But I think they are exploring various options on how to do that without really disrupting the user experience. And so I'm hopeful that the end result will not be as annoying as something that Coinbase does. I think Coinbase, the size that they are, they really need to make sure that they immediately comply with anything that's out there, and also in the best, perfect, and the most kind of secure way. Let's see how it's going to look like for other companies that maybe have had some more time to really think about how to make sure that this MiCA compliance is done essentially. Yeah.
So tell me more about WaveSpace. How does it work? Are you basically accessing another exchange like Kraken or Coinbase and you're selling the coins to them and you're taking a cut of the deal?
It's essentially, that's the core model for our first two products. So the way we think about kind of this mission of enabling people to live on Bitcoin and building all the tools that you need is, while our first two products, which is Swap and the other one is Wavecard, while they do require KYC and are reliant and like on this exchange infrastructure in the background, other products will not need KYC, right? We're already looking into Bitcoin-backed loans, working with other protocol developers, and this product will not need KYC. So essentially, we're very, very pragmatic on that front. But as you said, in a nutshell, the first two products, they rely on exchanges. We are essentially a broker for Bitcoin. We're working with a card issuer together to issue the card. It's a very much like exchange-like product suite that we have right now.
Right, because your startup reminds me of Relai from Switzerland. Relai is this startup that's basically an interface for Kraken, as far as I can understand. And what they're doing is provide the convenience. I think the main difference between Wavespace and Relai is that you're focusing on helping people spend their Bitcoin, or as you said, you're also trying to get a loan service, whereas Relai is focused on getting people to buy Bitcoin. And Relai has the convenience of allowing people to do DCA, which I think is not available on all exchanges. And they also have a very nice user interface. And they play this purity card by saying, oh, we're Bitcoin only. You don't have to deal with exchanges that have other coins, but they deal with them. And I was wondering, what's your competitive advantage? So why should people come to Wavespace as opposed to just trying something from Coinbase, which I think also has a debit card for spending, or Kraken, or I'm not sure if Bitstamp is as powerful as it was in Europe. I think Binance is much bigger now, but the question still stands. What is the competitive advantage of Wavespace?
So I think there's two answers to that question. The first answer, compared to a product like Relai, is as you mentioned before, we're focusing a lot on the sell side because essentially the way we are set up allows for selling Bitcoin up to essentially 100,000 euros per transaction within a couple of seconds directly to your bank account. And the interesting thing is that the money doesn't come from us, Wavespace, the company, but it comes from an IBAN in your own name, meaning that for the receiving bank that the money arrives at, it looks like an internal transfer because it is an internal transfer between two of your accounts, meaning that, obviously, if you were to sell 50,000 euros worth of Bitcoin, then your bank will probably ask, where do the funds come from, where you have the same problem if you send between any of your other bank accounts. But, for the normal user who wants to sell a couple of thousand to kind of finance their life, that's like, there's no real kind of blockers. And they're not going to block your account because they see that it's crypto related, because they don't know if it's crypto related, right? And I think that's a huge advantage compared to something like Relai. And when it comes to the kind of competitive advantage overall to providing these type of regulated exchange-based, banking-based products, our approach is very different to what Relai does or what exchanges do, where we work closely with a partner together who has these licenses and does all the regulation, all the stuff that's super expensive to build. And we don't need to do that. So we are very lean in terms of kind of the overhead that we have, and in terms of like building new products, because we can essentially leverage their API to build these different products without needing to go through the process, which is super expensive, getting the license and so on. And this essentially makes us, be able to focus purely on product, purely on like what's the best product that we can build using the tools that we have. What's the best, in our eyes, user experience for someone who wants to live on their Bitcoin. And I think with the first two products, I really think that we achieved the kind of process of shifting between euros and Bitcoin with the lowest friction possible, right? When you open Wavespace, you see immediately your kind of a Bitcoin deposit address and you just send it. We convert it and you immediately select your bank account, you click on send it. We send it with a SEPA instantly, and you receive it within a couple of seconds, essentially. The other way around too. Yeah.
Can you tell me more about this KYC process? What is it required for users to provide to you in order to use your service in the way that you describe it?
So the KYC process is very similar to what other exchanges require you to do. So it's we have two different levels essentially, where the first level is simply give your name, address, date of birth, do a picture like a photo of your ID card, and then you're essentially verified. And that's up to, I think the limits are up to 10,000 euros per month. And then if you want to kind of bring that to unlimited, or like I think the first kind of hard limit will be 100K. Then on the next tier is when you provide us with source of funds, which can be a payslip from last month or something similar, and a utility bill. So it's not something people haven't seen before. It's very similar. It's very similar, right? We just believe that, yeah, again, we differentiate ourselves by just focusing on this customer persona who's self-custodial and who only wants to kind of live and breathe Bitcoin. But yeah, so the KYC process is very similar to what you would see in other exchanges and brokers.
Yeah, I was just checking because in my case, when I sold at the top, I had no idea it was going to be the top, but I sold to buy my car for Christmas. Basically, what happened is that Kraken asked me for, I think, 5 years of proof that I got paid or something. Just a second. Pay stubs showing previous 2 years' income. And I thought, this is crazy. 2 years. 2 years. Not even my bank asked me for this.
That's crazy. Well, I can assure that this is not something we do at that point. I think in general, I can recommend it to people to kind of increase your limits first and then do the transactions that you want to do instead of the other way around, because there might be different way that's handled. But again, that's up to our partner to decide. That's just from what I understand, what I can recommend.
It's getting pretty unreasonable because if I dealt with cash, and let's say that I sold my Bitcoin for cash and I deposited the cash in my bank account, they'd be like, oh, where does it come from? And I tell them, oh, I played poker. And they would just shrug and say, that's fine. Just pay your taxes. Okay. And that's
Yeah.
it. But if it's about Bitcoin, they have to take extra steps, which are ridiculous.
Fair point. I mean, when the money lands in your bank account and comes from your own kind of IBAN, that's not crypto associated or Bitcoin associated, then yeah, it's up to you, I guess, to kind of what discussion you want to have with your bank.
Yeah, but they're still going to ask you, why do you have another account in another country under your name? Like, what's the point of this?
Yeah, you're right. I mean, it is getting, and the funny thing about that is they're not actually allowed to do that. That's like the bizarre thing is that I don't know, I don't remember actually the exact year when the European Union did that, but they decided at one point, maybe like 10 or 15 years ago, that banks are not allowed to discriminate based on the country of where the bank is from, if it's from within the EU. So they shouldn't be allowed to discriminate. They still do. But I mean, again, like a recommendation, just knowing that they are not allowed to discriminate because the bank is in a different country, maybe that can get you kind of, in the right kind of conversation where they can't really do anything against it. But that's the funny thing, right, about these regulations. It's just there's so many things that people don't know about how it works. And if they knew how it worked, obviously it would be the life would be easier. Yeah.
Well, the life would be easier if either there was no regulation or there was constant regulation, which doesn't change over time. If it didn't change so much and we didn't have to deal with all of this where you need to constantly update, and even finding an accountant who's up to date with this stuff is difficult.
Yeah. And then, it doesn't get better when the banks kind of enforce their own rules, right? They're allowed to enforce their own rules with regards to money laundering and onboarding. They are allowed to do that, but again, they're not allowed to discriminate you just because you want to pay from or to a different bank account in a different country. They shouldn't be allowed to do that, but sadly they do. So yeah, it's definitely annoying.
Yeah, it's messed up. And I was going to ask you about your debit card because it's interesting to me that we were supposed to build this Bitcoin economy where we pay each other directly in Bitcoin. And now what started out as creating a parallel system to the banking world ended up becoming something where we actually use the banks to spend our Bitcoin. Do you have any comments on this? When did you get into Bitcoin? Was it like this, or was this the expectation that this was going to happen?
So I got into Bitcoin in 2017, in the summer of 2017, when I essentially read an article about Bitcoin crossing $3,000 per coin, and then I kind of was remembered to back in 2014 when I remember that I think my father was it who asked me what the hell is Bitcoin, because it just dumped from 1K to 200 or something like that. And that's when I knew like there's something kind of, something valuable there, which needs to be discovered. When it comes to like this kind of ambition, we still have that ambition. We're not trying to. That's also why we're not kind of endorsing custody. We build products that where the UX is focused on self-custody, but at the same time we want to advance like adoption. And the core problem that we realized at the beginning of last year when we started on this journey was that we have this dichotomy, especially in Europe, where essentially on one hand, in my eyes, in my opinion, we have the most kind of passionate, most driven Bitcoiners out of the entire world, right? In Europe, based in Europe. A lot of Germans who are super passionate about it. The German community is huge. Switzerland too, Italy too. So, we have that on one hand, super passionate Bitcoiners, but on the other hand, we sadly or luckily, however you want to kind of call it, we have a very well functioning, at least comparatively, banking and payments infrastructure. Compared to the US even, and compared to other places in the world, Visa cards work, MasterCards work. Virtually everybody can get a bank account in Europe. There's not much issue around that. The kind of, the card costs are actually regulated down, where, the interbank fee, which is essentially the fee that, or part of the fee that the bank receives when you pay with your card, is regulated down to 0.2% in Europe. Whereas in the US, I think it's unlimited. So it depends on where your card is issued. Sometimes they get 2%, sometimes they get 2.5%, sometimes they get less. And that's also, by the way, the reason why a card like Fold can actually give 2% Bitcoin cash back, because they just take part of what they earn and they just give it to the customer. On the other hand, we have like this kind of this kind of regulation where SEPA Instant needs to be enforced this year. So back in January of this year, starting from back in January of this year, every single bank that would receive SEPA Instant transactions would actually have to account or like credit it to the user instantly. So the bank is not allowed to kind of say, we don't use SEPA Instant, we don't want to use it. In October of this year, it's going to be enforced that every bank needs to also send SEPA Instant transactions. So essentially every single bank in Europe will need to do SEPA Instant for sending and receiving. They will need to do it for free. And, that's, I guess, I'm not trying to kind of, credit the European Union too much, because we all agree that there's like mostly bad stuff happening. But I think in terms of all the regulated spaces that are, distributed around the world in terms of banking and finance, it's not as bad for the consumer as we think. And so like that's kind of the dichotomy we have. We have like super passionate Bitcoiners, but at the same time we have a comparatively very well functioning kind of payments infrastructure using these card networks. And we just realized that, in order to kind of push the next level of adoption and the next properly couple of million people into Bitcoin, we need obviously on one hand better user experiences on Lightning. Maybe something like Arc is going to solve that, stuff like that. But also we need to kind of have this, reduce the friction and just have a bridge between those two worlds. And yeah, so our kind of, I wouldn't say that I'm not disappointed or I'm not giving up, when it comes to this Bitcoin native Bitcoin economy, just peer-to-peer. I'm just trying to kind of build the tools to get the people on board, and but still have self-custody in the middle, because regulation can do whatever it wants. It can do whatever it wants, but if you have the coins in your own wallet, even if they know that you have them in your own wallet, but they can't move them. And to us, that's that's still at the core of Bitcoin. So even if we can't fight off the other stuff, just not your keys, not your coins. You have to hold it. If you don't do it, it's all going to be for nothing, essentially. Yeah.
It is interesting that we're getting SEPA Instant this year, because also this year we're going to have this CBDC that's issued by the European Central Bank.
Yeah.
So maybe they're just preparing the infrastructure for that one.
I think we give them too much credit, to be honest. So I really hope that, I've heard of the plans to do it this year. I think in terms of implementation of it, it's going to take a couple of years if they really want to do it. But it's not like they're super coordinating. EU is a huge kind of parasitic system of different people doing different things and impressing different stakeholders and stuff like that. And so one thing can be good, while at the same time, the other thing is super bad. And I don't think they're related. The SEPA instant stuff that was decided, I think, in 2016. It just took almost 10 years to implement it, or to force it. But yeah, with regards to CBDC, yeah, I have no idea what to think of that. I just really hope that, if it's not too late, and then if I don't know, the people need to protest, the people need to understand that it's a purely bad thing, an evil thing, and non-Bitcoiners need to understand it too. That's going to be interesting. I really don't know, if it's just if they're going to try to push it super hard next year. Because all that they said, I think, was to make a plan this year, to have a plan final, right? Yeah, I don't know what to think about that, to be honest.
Yeah, me neither, but it's very interesting that all of this is happening super fast. And after years when it was speculated that this is only going to be some sort of conspiracy theory and it's never happening, we see that there's a war on cash, first of all. It's becoming increasingly hard to get cash. And then you also have more restrictions for anything that allows you to have some freedom in this world. Like we always assumed, yeah, we're going to have this Bitcoin, which is our hope for freedom. But if your on-ramps and off-ramps are so regulated and there's blockchain analysis that traces every transaction and they have pretty good information about the people who buy on exchanges and then they transact, it's not quite what we hoped this was going to be. So I just want to express my hope right now that it's not going to become Orwellian and we're not heading towards a future where there is no financial freedom at all and you're just stuck in a system that maybe works when your leaders are competent and benevolent, but that doesn't last too long.
Yeah, that's a super interesting question generally, how that's going to proceed. I think I had this discussion, I think last month at a Bitcoin meetup in Berlin, and I think the thing that I'm kind of hopeful about is that politicians at the end of the day, and leaders and whoever's in control, essentially, at the end of the day, they're also people. and they also have children, and they have nieces, and they have wives, they have brothers, who are not maybe politicians and who might have heard about Bitcoin, who might have strong opinions about Bitcoin. And I think maybe, maybe we just have a short window of time, and we just gotta do everything in our power to kind of push adoption forward. And I think in that case, what does adoption mean is getting Bitcoin into the hands of everybody and anybody, in a self-custodial way. But I think that's still like the core mission, because once you have a politician, and I think Christine Lagarde once said that her son is really into crypto and Bitcoin. I really hope that he's not a super shitcoiner, but I would love.
I hope he is a super shitcoiner, because that's what's gonna give us even more freedom,
How do you mean that exactly?
Because if he spends a lot of time telling his mom, like, look, mom, I just bought this meme coin on Solana, it's so great.
Oh.
She's gonna misdirect her attention, This is how you DDoS the system. You make people waste their time and attention on something insignificant, like Cumrocket or whatever.
Maybe, maybe that's the move. I think it's probably too much of wishful thinking of me by me to kind of hope that he's a strong Bitcoiner and he can somehow convince like his mother.
Even if he does, you have to understand that
Yeah.
there's the mother side and then there's the official side. And I don't think when you're in that kind of position that you can really express personal beliefs or opinions. You're just there to do a job.
Yeah, fair enough.
And who votes for the president of the European Central Bank? It's the European Council. And who's the European Council? The heads of state. So it's prime ministers and presidents from every country. So when you're elected like this, you're not directly elected by the people. You're indirectly democratically elected because it's by delegation. I don't think you have too many personal opinions to present in that office. You're just being put there to do a job. I'm not even sure what's the impeachment process, how you can remove someone. But I guess the best way is to just get different heads of state into office and just rotate them, not have the same party constantly.
Probably, yeah. Yeah, I mean, there is a conservative movement in Europe right now. I don't know, maybe we can get everyone elected at the same time and hope that something changes. But yeah, I mean, if you think about, how would they enact control? The first place they would go to is the centralized exchanges, and just lock it down, ETFs, all that kind of stuff. So yeah, let's see, let's hope.
Sorry, I got distracted by someone in the chat. Examar, he wants to know, why is you run by a bunch of Karens and where have all the European men gone? LOL. I guess
Okay,
he's American.
I don't know how to reply to that, to be honest.
Sometimes, honestly, I think that the only way to stop regulations that might destroy the peer-to-peer use of Bitcoin is to actually get Bitcoiners into office. And that's something that we see in the United States.
Yeah.
They were able to finance Donald Trump's campaign and get him elected, and also have a few key people in his cabinet, in his administration, who are pro-Bitcoin. I'm not sure if I agree with them on all points, but let's see what happens. I mean, I haven't seen too many pro-Bitcoin candidates in my country. It's still very vague, but I'm from Romania. I'm not sure what it's like in Germany. You guys have had a hackerspace. There was in Berlin, you mentioned this specifically, that you were in a meetup in Berlin. There was Room 77, which is legendary. It used to have WikiLeaks people drinking beer there. One of the first Bitcoin wallets was built there by Andreas Schildbach. and it's just so legendary. And I presume that Bitcoin is much more of a cultural phenomenon in your country. And I also expect politicians to pick this up somehow, or at least get Bitcoiners involved in politics.
Yeah, I mean, in terms of politicians who are Bitcoiners, I guess I think there's one, Joanna Kota. But I mean, it's only one. She was in the AFD. I think then now she's independent, so like she's not getting a lot of like time to speak. I mean, let's hope, right? So until now, there haven't been too many Bitcoin politicians, I think, because the trust in the German institutions is still too high from also from the political class themselves. You know, everybody trusts the process still too much, which can't be said from like if you think about Trump, for example, he has absolutely no, you know, you can like him, you can hate him, but he doesn't at all like the institutions in the US. So I think that's something that's still kind of the reason why we don't see many Bitcoiners. But we have a Bitcoin Bundesverband. You know, we have a kind of association by Bitcoin entrepreneurs, by who try to kind of work with politics together, and let's see where that kind of goes. I just hope that because Germany is super slow, you know, which sometimes often everybody complains that Germany is super slow in terms of how things are getting decided, but maybe that's a benefit when it comes to Bitcoin. You know, just being this super slow until just we reach adoption, essentially. I don't know, but then you have the EU, so who knows?
You guys gotta be super slow because Romania is backwards. That's what we say, that we're always waiting for the others to make a decision before we make our own. So it's funny in this way. But MiCA is real. Like, I've heard from ATM providers, for example, that they will have to enforce KYC this year. It's gonna become much more strict, and this gray market economy is gonna sort of get phased out. There's only gonna be white market and black market, and that's it. I'm curious if Vexel is this application that was built by the Trezor people. I'm curious if that one, it's sort of like Tinder for buying and selling Bitcoin, but honestly, you can use it for anything. It's, I think you can get it from the App Store as a messaging app because they did not want to say they don't hold any Bitcoin, they don't have any business model, they don't collect any fees. So they put this as a messaging app, and you can basically get your phone agenda encrypted and verified against the phone agendas of others. And if you want to trade with them, what happens is that you see mutual contacts, and you can reach out to these mutual contacts and ask, hey, is this person trustworthy? Should I do business with them? So that's basically the trust model that's involved in Vexel. And I'm curious if it picks up. I remember Local Bitcoins. It was based in Finland. It shut down. There was Hodl. I don't think it operates in the same way right now. I gotta check. I haven't looked at that one in a while. There was also, but I do remember Hodl requiring KYC at one point. And there's also Bisq, which still survives because it's a protocol. It's not necessarily a service provider. But I don't know. I hope we get to keep that one too. And Vexel and Wavespace. I'm curious if you guys are going to be making waves, pun intended. But let me actually ask you a question, unless you want to comment on this. Do you want to comment?
Yeah, just wanted to say that these tools are crucial to have around always, right? That's like just obvious to me, and we got to support them as much as we can. The other thing I have to say regarding MiCA is, you know, the only like one positive thing that MiCA brought about is that at least now they're not going to annoy us for the next 10 years probably, because nobody in the EU wants to touch that topic again unless there's like proper like kind of, you know, will behind it. So at least, you know, hopefully the rules that we have right now we can have for a long time. And on the other hand, let's also hope that the amount of data that Bitcoiners generate, and the amount of services that exist in the EU just keeps on expanding. So, because at the end of the day, there's still no kind of reconciliation, right? It's not like there's a centralized database in the EU where everything is getting tracked, or like by the central bank. Yeah, let's just make a lot of noise, and let's hope that they don't touch it for a while. That's my kind of take on MiCA.
This question is more related to the business of Wave Space because you started this business, right? You have a startup in Europe. But from the other side of the pond, you get waves of people saying never sell your Bitcoin. Your business is built on the idea that people sell their Bitcoin because they need fiat money to pay for bills, to pay for rent, to pay for whatever, groceries. But then you get Michael Saylor telling people to never sell their Bitcoin. You get Donald Trump echoing the same opinion. And you have basically a cult that used to be I guess the cult used to say hodl. And hodl means don't sell at a loss. It means hold until you're actually profitable. That's what hodl used to mean. If you go to the origin of the meme on Bitcoin Talk, there was this guy complaining that the price went down, and hodl meant I'm just gonna hold until I can sell. And then it was okay, you gotta make your time preference longer. And now it became, well, you never sell your Bitcoin, and Michael Saylor is making claims that he's gonna die with his Bitcoin and whatever. And then MicroStrategy posts a new update to their terms and policy, which says they might sell their Bitcoin if needed to pay back their loans and blah, blah, blah. So, how does it feel to start a business while the culture is evolving in this way?
So I think for me, there's two things. On one hand, our business enables you to go all in Bitcoin, right? Whereas before, right now, you need to have a bunch of cash, a bunch of money in cash, in euros, because you have to pay your expenses. We allow you to even go all into Bitcoin, to even allocate the last kind of euros that you have to just go all in and just ride the Bitcoin wave, so to say. So that's one thing. And then the other thing that I really find disingenuous by someone like Michael Saylor is that what he's essentially saying by never sell is he's essentially saying that he likes the US dollar and he wants to continue paying with the US dollar, and he wants the US dollar to keep being his money. And so, like, if you subscribe to a worldview where you will always want to have US dollars or euros, then be my guest, right? But I think it's like there's two sides to this argument. Obviously, the perfect case would be to spend your Bitcoin peer-to-peer, and that's, I think, everybody's working towards this. We are also looking into building a wallet. We're talking to the ARC guys, to Marco from ARC Labs, and it's super promising what they're doing right now. And so, if we can kind of push forward that ecosystem, it's amazing. But to say, to really die on this hill of never selling your Bitcoin is kind of, I don't know, not really what a Bitcoiner would say, because it means you still use fiat, right?
But at the same time, you're also building a service, as you acknowledged at the beginning of this interview, to allow people to take loans against their Bitcoin. So I guess you're also preparing yourself for a world where people don't sell their Bitcoin.
Yeah, the way we approach this is to just provide you with all the tools that you need. It's really as simple as that, and that's how we make decisions. So, seeing that loans and Bitcoin-backed loans, Bitcoin native, whether it's like a multi-sig or you done via DLCs, it's super interesting, and there's a large market for that. But I mean, you can still use Bitcoin to kind of use Wavecard to spend your Bitcoin, or just use our services to sell Bitcoin, to buy Bitcoin, do whatever you want. You can take a loan out. We're also looking into Bitcoin rewards. So it's really what we're trying to achieve is to give you all the tools that you need to kind of get to this level of experience that you're used to with traditional banks. If you look at, I always take Revolut as an example because I really think that in terms of user experience, they really nailed it, right? They really you have essentially anything you want to do with a bank, you can do within the app in a couple of taps. It's the UX is super clean. You have insurance, you have rewards, you have a multi-currencies. Like for them, it's also a similar approach where they just focus on experience and giving you all the tools that you need. And that's why we draw a little bit inspiration from. But we just do it in Bitcoin land with the self-custodial wallet as a center. So yeah. So I think take out a loan if you want and use it. Of course, there's no issue with that, but it's also okay to just, sell Bitcoin when you need to, because when you need to, there's usually a good reason for that.
Yeah, for someone who only has Bitcoin and lives in the Bitcoin economy, it makes sense to spend and sell, because that's what you have. If you are holding Bitcoin and you say you never spent any Bitcoin, it just means you either have too much fiat or you're lying. There are only two sides of the spectrum. But if you take a Bitcoin backed loan and you need to pay that back and all you have is Bitcoin, you still need to pay, you still need to sell some Bitcoin to pay back your loan. And I think you get a much worse deal this way because the loan doesn't give you all the money you could have gotten if you just sold.
Exactly. Yeah, it's exactly as you say, essentially. I mean, these loans right now, if you look at, I don't know what the rates are on these protocols. I think Firefish is 8%, and obviously everybody's betting on the Bitcoin price increasing, but there could very well be a reality where, maybe we go sideways for 1 or 2 or 3 years longer than we would have expected. And what do you do then, Yeah.
Yeah, I was gonna ask you how your service is gonna be different from Firefish, and I guess you hinted something about fees.
I mean, we're not gonna try to compete with Firefish. So what we are doing is we are talking to people like Lendersets, Lava Loans, and others to essentially work together with them to provide this tool in our way, in our UX. Because at the end of the day, honestly, like what we are good at is building UX, trying to focus on the customer, and all the kind of more like heavy lifting in the background when it comes to these protocols, we just leave to partners that we like to work with, and that's how we enabled the card and the swap product. That's how we will enable the loans product, and that's probably also how we want to enable the Bitcoin kind of rewards product. We just want to ship as much value as possible over the next 12 months, and build like a home with all the tools you need. And the only way we can really achieve that in a short amount of time is when we just work together with other Bitcoin companies. And that's actually also like the beauty of working in the space, because just reaching out to you, and you being like, yeah, let's talk. Reaching out to Philip from Lenderset, and him being like, oh yeah, sure, we met like a year ago on a conference, let's talk. That's like something that's unique to the Bitcoin space, and I really like kind of suggest to every Bitcoin company to think about it that way, to kind of let's all work together. Let's find kind of business models where we can collaborate and just push this forward together, because the real builders economy and builders ecosystem in Bitcoin is super small and everybody's super open, and that's like the beauty of it. And I don't think that it exists in the crypto space or in other spaces as much. So we should try to leverage that. Yeah.
There's someone in the chat named This Is Fun AH, and he says that the first Bitcoin ATM there. So he's referring to room 77. That's the place where they put the first Bitcoin ATM in Berlin before it was outlawed. He also adds that the inefficiency of the German parliament is the best representative for Bitcoin, and the only free market is the black market. Let there be dark. This is what he's saying. I guess we're getting pushed towards that side. We tried as much as possible to avoid meeting people in a dark alley under the bridge to exchange, but this is where we're at. I mean, we tried to tell them, they were like, no, 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 you should do this. Fine.
Yeah, I mean, let's see, right? I mean, if you want to draw the parallels between euros or like fiat currency and like, white market, dark market kind of stuff, we can also make the case that there's like drug residue on every single 50 euro bill that is out there in circulation, And so obviously all the banks try what they can to, that should be the ambition to like really stop what is against the laws in that specific country. That's how countries work. But I guess, let's try to kind of find ways to have this distinction not be so clear. And I don't know. I don't want to endorse anything. Yeah, just pointing that out. I'm just saying that white market, dark market, gray market obviously already also exists in fiat land, and I don't see how Bitcoin would be so different. Yeah.
Yeah, I really like your honesty, Felix. I expected you to be more uptight and more business oriented, but I like your points. And I want to try something new if you're fine with it. So let me explain to you what I'm thinking. Instead of shilling the ads like I usually do on the show, I'm just gonna ask you what you know about them. And you can cheat, you can take a look at their website, but I'm actually curious to get feedback from you.
Okay.
So, do you know about Layer 2 Labs?
No.
They're building Drivechains, which is BIP 300 on Bitcoin.
Oh, yeah, I remember. Okay.
Do you know anything about that?
I researched it more like about a year or about 1 or 2 years ago, maybe even more. I researched a lot about it. But then I got kind of, I wouldn't say lightning pilled, but like UTXO pilled. And I really like the kind of, yeah, I'm not sure about the whole sidechain kind of idea because it just reminds me of, why not use rootstock? Why not use Ethereum? Why not use Ethereum? What's against just using Ethereum if you want to do like side chain stuff?
Well,
So I'm not
that's
sure.
what the market is doing actually, because WBTC on Ethereum is bigger than Lightning, is bigger than Liquid, Rootstock, you name them.
Okay.
All of them combined, I think still WBTC is like 10 times bigger.
So the
So
idea is to pull it back to Bitcoin essentially, right?
exactly, to bring it to Bitcoin, to benefit the Bitcoin miners, to bring it back to the Bitcoin economy. They actually have a sidechain for Ethereum stuff
Mm-hmm.
that's one-to-one compatible. The advantage compared to just using Ethereum is that if you have this sidechain in place, all the transactions that are happening are using Bitcoin and they're paying Bitcoin fees to the Bitcoin miners.
That's fair. That's good. I think that's a very fair point. Um, I guess my only question would be around if you bring it back to Bitcoin, would many people actually use it? I think that's the only question I have because that's what I see with Rootstock or like I think back then it was called RSK, right? For a while. It's just, it's EVM compatible, but there's just not as much use out there because the shit coiners, it needs shit coiners to generate a lot of fees, a lot of volume and a lot of speculation. I don't know. So what I'm saying is, I don't know. I like the effort of bringing it back to Bitcoin and, rewarding the miners. I think that makes a lot of sense. Yeah, let's see. In terms of adoption, big question mark for me.
Okay, what about ZK Rollups? One of the other sponsors is Citrea. They're trying to I mentioned before WBTC on Ethereum. That one is trusted. So it is being custodied by BitGo and it's not as secure as having something on top of the Bitcoin network. And what they're trying to build basically is have a rollup, which is sort of a side chain ish. It's not quite a side chain, it's more like a protocol. If you ever used Counterparty or Omni or something like that on Bitcoin, it's similar in some ways. And they want to bring financial services to that. So they have the EVM compatibility. They can do lending and borrowing and all of these financial services. They can do applications, and it's all using BTC because it's pegged to Bitcoin.
I actually heard about them a while back because obviously we, as I mentioned before, we want to eventually also build a wallet, provide a wallet. And we're also thinking about, maybe using a layer 2 to kind of hopefully make our swap and our card service even more like self-custodial, or at least like in some kind of multi-sig setup. But yeah, I honestly I don't know too much about it. So I've explored it a little bit. I like the effort. I just wonder how much it kind of compares to an approach like the ARC guys are trying to do, where you can also have like contract enforcement and stuff like that. But again, I'm not on that level of technicality, so I can't really formulate a good opinion on that, to be honest.
No, this is good enough. What I'm trying to get is just perception because I guess my sponsors, it's valuable to understand okay, you are a business developer in the Bitcoin world and you have been around to conferences, you have spoken with some people, and you have some perceptions, which might be correct, might be wrong, doesn't matter. They're yours. This is sort of feedback,
Yeah, it's a fair point. I think the most important thing that you can do as a like kind of crypto company coming into and building something with or on top of Bitcoin is like be honest, like be as honest as you can. Like, it's okay to say like we tried, or like we want to build layer 2 eventually, and this is like what we're building on, but we're not there yet. Or, that's completely fine. But I think what's always kind of criticized for crypto projects trying to kind of, it looks like they're trying to hijack Bitcoin in some way. It's often because they're not just upfront honest about what they're doing or where they are right now. My latest kind of level of information, maybe that's wrong, maybe they've kind of solved that problem, was that the layer 2 rollups on Ethereum still don't have like unilateral exits, like the ZK rollups don't have that yet, but they are marketed everywhere that they have it, right? That is like an example of something that when people need to be careful, because obviously if they're once branded as, being kind of anti-Bitcoin ethos, I guess, or just dishonest, then it's hard to come back from that. So that would be my biggest kind of recommendation. Yeah.
It's also complicated in the rollup world because they came up with so many terms to describe them, like optimistic rollups, relativistic rollups, optimistically verified rollups, and it's different from optimistic rollups. And if you're not following every team and you're not aware of what's happening, it's so easy to confuse them or be misled.
For sure. Like if you type in Bitcoin layer 2 on Google or just on Twitter, on X, you're gonna find like, I don't know, 50 projects, and probably 45 of them are just, I don't know, bullshitting. I don't want to, like, maybe it's less, maybe it's more, but you're absolutely right. Everybody says it's a layer 2, and it's really important to kind of show the differences and make the case why you're different. Yeah.
I think a lot of them are similar and they're counting on marketing or maybe some VC money that they raised to stay relevant, and they go to conferences, they introduce themselves, but not too many of them are actually shipping code. And I think that's where the difference really is. Citrea, Alpen Labs, and there are a few others. I don't want to miss them. Anyway, these guys are actually hiring cryptographers and they're building something. I wouldn't accept to promote Citrea if I didn't speak with the guys, if I didn't see what they're building. The frustrating part is that they're all running on test nets, because they're waiting for some sort of covenant soft fork or something to make it easier for them to deploy.
Makes sense. I mean, maybe they can find a way to do it like Arc does, where you have these rounds, but then it would probably be Arc. I don't know. I have no idea, to be honest. But I
They
heard,
did find a way, but
yeah,
it's the most expensive way possible.
yeah,
And if it's too expensive, it becomes more centralized because very few service providers can create these services for you.
yeah,
And it's also, once again, unilateral exit is still an issue for every L2 out there, including Lightning. Like, if you are, let's say, on some sort of custodial wallet, you have to do a swap. That's the only way you can exit. You don't have your own channel. You just need to swap liquidity with someone else. And I think also for rollups and for everything out there, there's gonna be swapping services that are gonna get built around this use case and then profit and grow and blossom. The beautiful part is that Lightning can actually do cross-chain atomic swaps. It's just that this use case was not really developed so far. I know that there was an atomic swap between Litecoin and Bitcoin because Litecoin was the testnet for mainnet Lightning. So they did that in 2017 or something.
I'm curious how that's going to develop because, when I first heard about the success of Bolt's exchange, for example, there's many others, but I was kind of disappointed that I was like, okay, this is essentially how we fix the problems that we have with Lightning. Apparently, now we use like Liquid, we kind of do a lot of swaps, but maybe this is the pragmatic kind of easy way where we can reduce the trust assumptions as much as possible, while still, I don't know, kind of connecting the ecosystem and having hopefully cheap payments into everywhere. So they've kind of proven me wrong. Also the way, Bolt's exchange is super stable. Just no endorsement, but maybe that's our way forward. I don't know.
Yeah, I just hope that we're not gonna surrender to ETFs and banks because it seems right now that ETFs, at least in the US, are the scaling layer for Bitcoin, and it's how institutions can buy in without actually ever touching Bitcoin. And this goes back to the dangers of paper Bitcoin.
Right.
You have no guarantee that what they're buying is backed one-to-one by on-chain UTXOs, or that they cannot create derivatives, or... I guess you watched The Big Short and how they had these mortgages and you had financial companies betting for and against them.
Yeah.
Crazy. How you have multiple layers of bets and money that doesn't exist.
Yeah,
and then when it implodes, nobody can pay.
It's insane. It's that's also like what we think about is like the most important thing. That's why obviously our services, like some of our services are KYC. That's just because that's the pragmatic way in our eyes to like onboard people. But what's the most important thing about Bitcoin is just having Bitcoin in your hands, or like just having Bitcoin. And I guess the only thing I can say about this ETF banking kind of rehypothecation thing that's going to grow, that is growing right now, that's going to grow even more, is, any kind of new product and the derivative you can think of, they will eventually build and sell, like anything that's possible will happen, in that kind of regard, because there's just no way to really verify what's underneath. And with this derivative market, it's insane. If you compare the kind of real world economy in terms of value, like if you just do like market cap, look at the market cap or like the GDP, and then you look at the stock market cap, and then you look at the derivatives market, it just skyrocketed. So like even now our current economy, every single like Apple stock or like just stock that you have is being kind of traded and like betted on by like this market that's like, I don't know how many times bigger than the actual underlying Apple stock. And that's only possible because we don't track that. And that's also why Bitcoin backed loans using DLCs, multi-sigs is so important, because that's the only way you can verify that there's just, one kind of contract based on this. Yeah. So anything that can happen will happen, I think, in that kind of world. So withdraw your coins. That's the most important thing. Withdraw from exchanges.
Yeah, that's very true. I see on your profile that you say something about EU/ACC, which is European Acceleration. I'm curious what this means. You're trying to maximize the potential of Europe for business and startups.
Yeah, I mean, so it's like when I kind of started on my before I started on my journey. I guess when I started my journey in the startup ecosystem, having friends that are founders and seeing other people in the Bitcoin space that founded companies, it was kind of sad to see that, especially in the Bitcoin space, European Bitcoin companies, like, I don't know, 50-60% of them founded a company in Delaware, or maybe they flipped their company into Delaware. And then I'm talking to a bunch of Bitcoin VCs, and they all say, we only invest in you if you do a Delaware flip. Essentially, you have to incorporate your holding in Delaware, and then it holds, right? It holds our company in Lithuania. And I just think that's kind of sad, that this is the reality. And so what EUACC is doing, essentially just pushing forward two big things. One is this European kind of incorporation, this new company entity that can be created by any European digitally without any notarization process, because this is notaries are what kill foreign investments into Europe, because they just don't want to kind of deal with that. So it's like having one single company entity around Europe, being able to employ Europeans from wherever they are without having any issues, being able to raise money also from US investors through a very simple structure that the US guys already are comfortable with. And then the second big initiative that's going to come afterwards is creating a capital market union for Europe, because that's the only way we're going to compete with the US. If you look at the AI space, hundreds of companies raising millions of dollars, all in the US, even though the companies here in Europe, Klarna, I think, tried to IPO, or was thinking about IPOing in New York and not in Sweden, because it's just, they can't really properly IPO in Sweden because we don't have a capital markets union. So, I just think that, that's kind of sad, and that's why I'm kind of pushing that forward. But I'm not super engaged in it right now. Just too much other stuff to do. But it's a good cause. I want to push forward.
I sympathize with your idea. One of my other sponsors is NoOne, which is a peer-to-peer marketplace. And the goal of the CEO, Ray Youssef, is to empower the global south. He took on this mission, and he believes that he should start with the unbanked, with the Africans, with people in the Middle East, with people in South America, the people who actually need to be using Bitcoin. And they can use peer-to-peer exchange. They can also get a debit card, which I guess competes with your product. But your product is only available in Europe, I think.
Mm-hmm.
And he also has a spot market if you want to use the actual exchange service. It's pretty interesting. So what's even more interesting is that the currency that they use for a lot of their trades is the gift card. So if they have something like a Steam gift card, Amazon gift card, or whatever, they don't really use it. They try to swap that for coins that they can use on the local economy. So if you go to NoOne and you register with an account, you can actually trade with some of these people and help them support their economy. The system is built so that everyone takes a cut, so it's profitable for you, and it will be profitable for them too when they sell in the next step. And yeah, it's pretty cool. NoOne.com. Check it out. And also there's another company from Switzerland. I'm not sure if you consider that to be part of Europe. It's not part of European Union, but it's part of the European continent. And they do have some sort of special agreement for trade. There's like this extended European area of which Norway is also part. And Hodling.ch provides consultancy for self-custody. So large companies that want to buy Bitcoin, or whales that have no idea how to manage their coins to eliminate the single point of failure, they can reach out and they're gonna consult you on how to set up your multi-sig, whether or not you need hardware wallets, and how to consider solutions over the long term. If you want to hold for 10 years, you should be sure that the tools that you're going to be using will still be available and maintained in 10 years. So check out their service at hodling.ch. They also have a coin recovery service for people who lost like 3 or 4 words from their seed phrase, or they scrambled the order. They can try to brute force that. They can try, emphasis on can try, and they also take a cut from that. So don't expect to recover your whole amount. Yeah. Anyway, there's also, so your service also provides swapping, but it's Euro to BTC. And I was going to ask you if you also plan to add some sort of Euro stablecoin, or that's not pure enough for your audience.
We wouldn't say that's not pure enough. Like stable coins will be necessary in some form or another if we want to have loans. But yeah, Euro stablecoin is not something we want to do, because I feel like it's a super big project and would require kind of all the effort to be put into that. Because if you look at the US dollar stablecoin market, there's just two, and the only reason why USDC kind of succeeded was because some exchanges felt more comfortable using a stablecoin that's based on the US territory. But yeah, that's not in plans. I have to say though, so our swap product is available in the EEA, so not only EU. Our card is only EU, but the question is really, we had a couple of people living in Switzerland. They were German, they have a German bank account, but they are living now in Switzerland. For those people, it's obviously nice that they can use the swap product, but since we only accept euros, it's kind of niche. Yeah.
It's still good to have. But I disagree with you that there are only 2 US stablecoins. There are much more, or many more, except that maybe they're not regulated enough. For example, you have DAI, which is this algorithmic stablecoin, and you have a lot of copies that try to improve on the model. And you have a lot more. I think even Binance has their own stablecoin, or used to have.
I think if there's like a precise use case that a Euro stablecoin could solve for us as a company, then we would obviously have a look. But the issue with stablecoins is like that liquidity begets liquidity. That's like kind of the thing, right? If you want to trade, if you want to buy something, sell something, it's usually best done on markets that are super liquid, because it's more efficient. And so like, I guess if a Euro stablecoin would be interesting to us from a product perspective, enabling new forms of product, or maybe something along those lines, then it's definitely interesting. But we wouldn't try to kind of build a huge distribution channel around trying to distribute our stablecoin. But it's interesting. I assume your next sponsor has something to do with that.
Oh yeah.
Okay.
Sideshift. If someone wants to pay you in stablecoins and you don't want to hold on to that for various reasons, then you just go to Sideshift, you put your Bitcoin address, and then first you select the pair, the stablecoin swapped into Bitcoin. You put your Bitcoin address, and then you send to the person wanting to pay you in stablecoins the address for Ethereum or Tron or Solana or whatever. They send you they say Sideshift the stablecoin, and you get the Bitcoin in your wallet, and you don't have to stress about anything else. So that's a use case. Another use case is that you can swap your Bitcoin into anything you want, and that can be dangerous. I don't give you financial advice here, but if you want to buy the Trump coin or whatever, you can do that too. So don't blame me if you get wrecked. I'm just saying it's possible. I'm not saying you should do it. Sideshift.ai. And I'm grateful for these swapping services because they sort of remove the need for you to KYC on exchanges. Some of them do require KYC for large amounts. I think Sideshift does too. But for something like $10, you have $10 of Ethereum and you don't want to hold it. You swap it immediately and you get something that you do want to hold. Like, did you ever have any experience with these services?
Not really. I mean, sometimes I'm thinking about like buying some random meme coins, or like not sometimes. I'm just saying like once I downloaded a Phantom, which is Solana wallet, and I was wanted to buy a meme coin, and I mean, to be honest, the experience is great, right? The experience is super nice because you have it's just super simple. It works. It's not overly expensive. It can be used by anyone on the planet. So like in general, this experience is nice, but yeah, for me, honestly, anything I think about is on that side is Bitcoin. Like at this point, I've been in this space for 8 years. I kind of played around with a lot of altcoins, shitcoins, meme coins, and I don't feel it adds a lot of value to me personally. Yeah, but I do appreciate like how these services teach the decentralized and kind of Wild West nature of this entire space, right? I mean, you have to acknowledge that the experience of kind of downloading an app and then seeing like 100,000 different coins and like ways to interact with different chains, and like I do understand that it's interesting to people, but I think yeah, if you want to, yeah, it's a good like kind of learning tool in my eyes.
Yeah, and also you have to understand that, for example, in the case of the Trump coin, right? It rose to prominence in one day, being traded only on the Solana DEX. So that was actually a triumph by the DeFi industry, where people were able to buy Trump coins using only decentralized tools. And the next day, I think every centralized exchange saw what's happening. And they're like, yeah, we're listing Trump coin too. Coinbase did it. A bunch of others did it. It raised a lot of questions because usually they say, oh, we take a long time to process and review when we add a new coin. And we have this procedure, and you can read it here. And if you are working for a project that wants to get listed, you have to wait a few months, you have to pay this amount of money, blah, blah, blah. They did it after one day with the Trump coin, and that's actually when the big sell-off started happening. But it was an interesting phenomenon because you got a top 20 coin that was launched on Solana, and it was propped up only using Solana tech. No fiat money involved. It was pure crypto experimentation. And even though I hate the fact that people lost money with that, and I would never tell people to buy it, it was still such a beautiful display of what we can actually do if we build DeFi on Bitcoin. And I don't mean the rug pull side of it. I just mean that you can bring assets that people find of value and not have to touch banks.
Yeah, I think it's an interesting topic because I feel like, like if you think about the different use cases that we have right now, there's kind of the money use case, which is best fulfilled by Bitcoin. Then you have the kind of credit token use case, which is a big use case, which is, stable coins, which can be I don't know, store credits. It could be store credit, airline miles, that kind of credit aspect where you have a centralized entity that issues kind of an asset. You could even say that you can kind of tokenize, real world assets. There's also like apparently there's a lot of demand for that market. But I feel like, yeah, I don't, it's just not that interesting to me. To me, what's really interesting is the money use case. And so again, I'm just doubtful of the kind of the adoption of anything related to kind of launching your own assets and DeFi on Bitcoin. Yeah, I mean, I'm happy to be convinced otherwise, I guess, but I don't see stable coins, fair enough. But the rest, I don't see a big use case for them, to be honest. I don't know. Let's see.
Well, I think, for example, in the case of video gamers, it's gonna be super easy. Let's say that you're playing Fortnite and you have some skins, and those skins can be traded, bought, and sold. But you don't want to sell it for another skin, and you don't want to sell it maybe for cash. You want to swap it for maybe a Minecraft skin or something like that. And if there was a market for this, to be able to tokenize your Fortnite skins and swap for something else in a trust minimized way without any central entities being involved. I mean, of course, there's a central entity because there's the server from Minecraft that is going to store that information. But once again, a way in which I was understanding the NFTs, for example, is that let's say that you're playing World of Warcraft and you have this beautiful armor that you don't want to lose. And maybe that you can create an asset that represents that armor. And when the server gets shut down, let's say that you're playing on a server that's not official, you can actually have other servers opening up and recognizing these assets and allowing you to continue your adventure from where you left off with the items that you had. I don't know if you're a video gamer, but for me, this kind of stuff is exciting, and I don't get why gamers in general hate everything crypto. I guess it's because of video cards becoming expensive.
Probably. Yeah, I mean, look, like I see the use case definitely. I think what I find or like what I think is the question we should ask ourselves is what kind of technical infrastructure do we need to issue these credit tokens, because they are kind of credit tokens, right? It's what I found interesting is the approach that here peer credit by Tether and John Carvalho from Synonym, they worked on that, or like they at least published like a way that this could work. You know, I'm unsure whether there's any technical implementation of that, but what I found interesting in that regard was that it's fundamentally free to transact, to send these credit tokens. Because they just kind of started from different trust assumptions. They started from the assumption that every single token that is issued, every single credit token, is kind of reliant on the single issuer. And let's kind of put the responsibility for this kind of for the transaction of this token throughout the world in the hands of this issuer, while making it stable, scalable at the same time. So that's something that I found interesting. Another thing that I find super interesting, or like where I can definitely see the use case in terms of how we can kind of do this kind of like implement this kind of product, is just going the other route and being like, let's centralize as much as possible and make the blockchain as fast as possible, where obviously there was like Solana's approach, but that's also something that Hyperliquid does. Hyperliquid is essentially doing regulatory arbitrage for exchanges. That's the entire reason of existence, is like they want to build an exchange that is as powerful and fast as Coinbase and Binance and so on. But they want to do it in a way where they can kind of say it's decentralized, even though obviously it's rather centralized. But I find that interesting because it's like playing, it's just like a regulatory arbitrage kind of play. So yeah, I don't know. Like I like the idea of these like in-game economies. I'm still unsure what the best implementation of a technology that can power these tokens will be. Whether it's like something like Hyperliquid, super centralized but still compatible. Maybe it's something like Solana, which is like almost as centralized but a little bit less centralized. Or maybe it's something entirely different, non-blockchain based, something like pair credit. So I'm still unsure about that. Maybe it's through Lightning. Maybe Lightning is the best technology to kind of send around credit tokens. Yeah. I have no idea, but I like the idea for sure. There's definitely a use case for for this product for sure.
And contrary to what a lot of people would say, because I can imagine the kind of guys who would listen to this and get angry, like, why do you promote scams? Why do you legitimize shitcoin tech? Stuff like this. This is very cypherpunk. It's exactly the kind of world for which I signed up, you know? And the fact that you have free markets trying to find solutions is even cooler. Of course, there's gonna be a winner in this race. And of course, not everything is a scam. There's always this conversation that 99% of projects are scams. And maybe that they're not all scams. Maybe that 80% are scams and 19.9% can survive on the market because they have bad business models but good intentions. But it's all open source. So if there's anything that is interesting, if any project makes a breakthrough, that can be used for something else. So it's not like it's a complete waste. From the perspective of an investor, of course, buying Bitcoin is the safest bet because it's the only project about which we know that is still going to be around in 10, 20, 30, 40 years from now. But everything else is still useful because we would not have ZK rollups, for example, on Bitcoin if it wasn't for Ethereum. We would not have any ZK stuff at all if it wasn't for Zcash to start the research in this field. So there's definitely something useful. Monero, for example, is like the test bed for a lot of proposals for Bitcoin privacy. Ring signatures were proposed for Bitcoin. Dandelion, that is trying to provide network level privacy, was also proposed for Bitcoin. Confidential transactions proposed for Bitcoin. So it's interesting to see how the market reacts to these elements. And please don't call us shitcoiners. Like, seriously. We love Bitcoin very much.
Yeah, it's. I think it's. Yeah, I don't know. Like, I have a quite a distinct view or like rationale or regarding how I look into or like how I evaluate these things. You know, like I think fundamentally just saying like dismissing the technology is just stupid. You know, it's a very ignorant view. Still, I always try to make the case. You know, if you kind of fundamentally think that Bitcoin will win the money race, then you should probably buy Bitcoin. And then if Bitcoin wins the money race, why should any other sidechain or network use anything other than the hardest currency to pay kind of the fees and everything? And the other thing is also like in terms of, you know, like just saying what things are, being like it's a credit token. Credit token is a very good use case to have, but it's a credit token. It's like issued by a party, you know. Bitcoin wasn't issued by someone. Obviously, other coins also haven't been really issued by someone, but they're just worth money compared to Bitcoin for various reasons. So, you know, I could imagine a world where there's technology similar to Hyperliquid, which is like it's incredible how fast it is, right? It's insane that it can compete on a level with centralized exchanges in terms of just how transactions run through this technology. But you know, maybe we can fork Hyperliquid and just slap Bitcoin on top and just use Bitcoin to pay the fees, and maybe it works. Maybe it makes sense.
And that's what Drivechains are trying to be, basically.
Exactly. Yeah, exactly. So again, like in terms of usage, I don't know what's going to happen, but I think it's definitely makes sense to explore that. Yeah, and I mean, alternatively, you can always think about, you know, if you think that Hyperliquid is extremely centralized, it's like just one company offering one product, and essentially Hyperliquid, the token, is just an unregistered security in that mind. It's like a stock. You could make the case that, you know, stocks and investments in companies will probably still exist after Bitcoin. So why not? It's obviously not enforced by law. You know, they can do whatever they want with a token, but I still think there's a case to be made. But yeah, I think in general, it's important to kind of focus attention on one single thing. And yeah, I have all these thoughts about these different projects, but yeah, I usually don't explore too much in terms of like, I don't know, trading or stuff like that, because that's what is trading, right? There's a difference between buying something and holding it for 10 years, and there's a difference between, or like using it as money. And there's a difference between, trying to time the market, which is just speculating, and you can do that. And then you're an investor, I guess. And if you understand the rules of crypto, then just be my guest, do it. But I don't think it's the innovative thing, or like, at least let me rephrase it. I think money and Bitcoin as money is the much more kind of impactful thing to work on, which is why I just focus on that. I
I
hope that
used to
makes
hate
sense.
traders, but they're like the heart that keeps on pumping more blood into the system. And I'm saying blood, not money. They pump blood.
Right.
That's the currency that they're using, blood.
Yeah, I don't know. I just, like, it's the entire crypto game is a huge wealth transfer from people who don't know to people who know. If you can think about it like that, right? If you're a better trader because you know more about, I don't know, the market or about how markets work than the other person, then that's the game you're playing. And if you don't know less about what you're actually trading right now, then you're gonna lose probably eventually.
But you can also know and get wrecked. And there are examples of that.
I mean, if you buy Bitcoin and maybe Bitcoin doesn't work out, yeah. I mean, I guess then we're all wrecked. But you could just buy Bitcoin, just once, and then just keep it and then hope it's going to be money. And then um, I'm just making the case that there's a difference between kind of trading and investing,
Yeah,
long term.
I understand. If Bitcoin doesn't work, and let's say that it goes bust tomorrow, which is very unlikely, but let's say that it does, what's your backup plan? What are you going to do with your life?
I have no idea. I think I would have to just reflect what I'm gonna do. Maybe I always wanted to do woodworking. Maybe I'm gonna do that. I was always like, okay, if this doesn't work out, I'm just gonna, become a woodworker and like build chairs and tables. I don't know. I have no idea.
Oh, that's beautiful. At least you're not saying, oh, I got a university degree in this, so I'm going to use this degree to get a job at the government.
No, 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 no. Don't worry about that. What about you?
I guess I would become a school teacher.
Honorable for sure.
Put on a suit, cut my hair, grow a mustache, be very serious and strict. They're gonna call me, oh, look, it's that Bitcoin man. Ha ha ha, Bitcoin. My dad told me that Bitcoin sucks and it did not work.
It would be a sad existence. Like, imagine, like, getting bullied by all the kids. I don't know. But I mean, I don't know. Yeah.
Should be funny. Anyway, Bitcoin.com news. I forgot to plug the sponsor. If you ever search for news that you don't find in many other places, for example, Bitcoin Magazine has a lot of news from the US. Coindesk has mostly news that pay. I think that's a big issue in the industry because it became a custom that reporters don't write about your project unless you paid for it. This interview, you did not pay for it. And I don't ask anyone to pay because the kind of journalism that I do is backed by sponsors. I never asked anyone to pay for interviews. And when I like something, I just like it and I give it a platform. Or at least I find it interesting. Because yesterday I did an interview with a BSV guy, but I digress here. On Bitcoin.com news, you actually find news that are reported from Twitter, from other parts of the world. They seem more genuine, and I think they're doing a pretty good job. They have a bad reputation from the time when they used to confuse Bitcoin with Bitcoin Cash. They fixed that, so it's not that way anymore. Now it's a BTC website, if you check it out. And they also have some interesting news about gold, about other types of markets. Check it out. Felix, it's been a pleasure to speak with you for 95 minutes now. How can
Oh,
people follow you and your project?
Yeah, I mean, the best way is probably to just check out wave.space. See what we do, see kind of what mission we're on. And definitely also follow us on Twitter, on X at @wavespace_. And yeah, that's it.
Okay, thank you very much and best of luck with your service. I hope people do sell their Bitcoin.
I hope so too.